So, I was looking around the NFC playoffs, and I see a team from the West. I see some teams from the East. Obviously, we know the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what happened to them. And then kind of, a team that's not really making a whole lot of noise is the NFC North. And the team that won that division was the Minnesota Vikings. And yet, of all the teams that won a division this year, I think people look at Minnesota and go, yeah, that was a bit fraudulent. Point differential, all of that stuff. So the questions now become, where does Minnesota go from here? Because they've got, some stuff they have to decide on. Justin Jefferson wants a brand new contract, or wants a new contract eventually. You got Kirk Cousins, who he's, going to be 35 years old, and he's got a couple of years left. Maybe they try and, rework his deal so they can make room for Justin Jefferson. All of that being said, their defense is atrocious.
Yes, they got to revamp their defense.
Yeah, and so Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the GM of the Vikings, spoke yesterday about Kirk Cousins and the direction of the organization and Justin Jefferson. Here was the Vikings GM.
It's our expectation that he'll be our quarterback. I can't say exactly how that would look. Again, we have everything at our disposal. We'll consider all those things just like we will with everybody else. I wouldn't use the word challenge. You got a special player, special person. Those aren't problems, or at least those are champagne problems. So we'll start there. Yeah, we've had initial dialogue with him, his agent, all those things. We can factor that into the planning, but again, it really starts from the player, the person, and we'll work out solutions from there on.
So it feels like Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson are championship problems, but defensively, man, oh man, they seem like they're a ways off.
They were really good, just literally 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
It's a season or so ago.
Not anymore.
They've been dwindling. When Mike Zimmer first got there, they're the best third down defense in the league. You probably say they're for sure a top half, maybe top 10 defense. And then they started to kind of fall by the wayside. And as Mike Zimmer's tenure concluded, that was probably one of the things that led to that. Is he was there for his defensive prowess, and they just didn't have it anymore. This year, they were a little bit up against it because you had a completely different scheme compared to what the secondary in particular was asked to do versus what Ed Donatell's asking, their current defensive coordinator, versus what Mike Zimmer was going to do. And there's 2 issues with that, and LaVar, you could probably speak to this. One, if you're asking your secondary to play a different scheme, does that scheme match their skill set? That's the first question. And 2, it's going to take a while to grow comfortable with it. And I don't know that they had the pass rush that Ed Donatell was able to experience during his runs being a part of the Broncos with Vic Fangio when he was a defensive coordinator, and even during times with the Bears. I mean, when you think about some of those teams and their pass rush, whether it's Khalil Mack or going back to the time with the Broncos, guys like Von Miller and some of their other edge rushes that they had during that time, it makes it a little easier on that secondary to play a little bend but don't break. This year, it was a lot of bending, and sometimes it was breaking, but there wasn't a whole lot of a pass rush. So it was an uphill battle, I think, for that defense this year, and really the Vikings as a whole.
You do have to match skill sets to have success. You can't try to avert what a kid's skill. If a kid doesn't have good hips, you can't have him playing in spaces where he has to use his hips in order to have success. So, yeah, you do have to make sure that you are playing to the strengths of what you have. They only have, really, Zadarius Smith as a real threat off of the edge. I just think that they still have, some core players. Hendricks. Is it Hendricks or Kendricks? It might be Kendricks.
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 Yeah. Kendricks. I think they have some core guys that still – you can possibly salvage some of this defense without having it be kind of a total overhaul. But it's definitely their defense that has to improve. You got to keep the offense together, and you got to improve your defense. You got a running game. You got an elite runner when he's healthy, and Cook. You got one of the most elite receivers, if not the best receiver in the league right now in Jefferson. You got a franchise quarterback. I say it loosely from my perspective, but I think he is. He is a franchise quarterback. So you have key elements to having a championship caliber team, and for better or for worse, it at least it showed in the regular season, and at least they had a really good showing in terms of winning the division, even with a porous defense. So I think that is, if they were to put the time into building the defense, it might even be getting a different defensive coordinator, a different defensive staff. I'm not sure. It might be the familiarity of being in the system longer. It might be the familiarity of the coaches knowing what they have in their personnel. I don't know what it is, but they have to improve the defensive side of the ball if they want to go to the next level.
So Chip Scoggins, who covers the team for the Star Tribune, he did a breakdown on their defense and just where they've been at over the past several years. So in the 2015 draft, they took Eric Kendricks, Daniil Hunter, and Trey Waynes, which all of those guys, that was a great draft for them, especially on that side of the ball. Since then, since 2015, Minnesota's drafted 36 players on defense. Only one of them was a full-time starter this year. They have whiffed and whiffed and whiffed, which has been why I've never been everybody like Kirk Cousins is easy to pick on, and Kirk Cousins is easy to say, well, it's the 1 Eastern time window and it's his OCD and all this stuff. Man, that defense has been the problem for a couple of years now. Like, it's not a Kirk Cousins issue. It's not Justin Jefferson. It's not Cook. It's the defense. And the fact that they won as many games as they did just shows you that offense was bailing them out for their lack of talent and their lack of being able to put together anything that resembled what Mike Zimmer's defense was like early on in his tenure there. They're awful on defense. And that's
but again, they've been bad now for a while. They hit rock bottom this year. I mean, this to me was rock bottom. They were about as bad as it gets. And so it's going to be a tough decision for Kevin O'Connell to decide whether he wants to keep on and see if a second year in the system will help this group grow, or does he want to make roster changes? Does he want to change potentially that position, given Ed Donatell's been in the NFL for, I think, over 3 decades? A lot of tough decisions to make for Kevin O'Connell and heading into his second year. But it is interesting you bring up the OCD of Kirk Cousins, only because I'm pretty sure you're one of the first people that brought that up.
It's never been proven. So, there's no proof of that. No track record of
I
that.
just said that about you off air. How crazy is that? The coincidence of that. I just said.
What'd you say?
We were having a conversation, and I referenced his OCD. And, well, I don't know. I didn't say
Talking about Jonas's OCD?
Yeah, I was talking about Jonas's.
Well, the funny thing is, he would say that, like, what is it? Is it the OCD where he can't play outside the 1 o'clock window because the way he structures schedules his days?
So there was, when he was at Michigan State, there was this article I read that said that he had his entire routine.
Are you admitting this right now? To you actually using that after you just said
no. Okay, so all right, I want to explain the backstory on this.
This is great.
Nobody could figure out why Kirk Cousins struggled in primetime because it was always Monday night. Even back in Washington, whenever they played on Monday night or they went to a playoff game. Remember that LaVar, that game against the Packers, and they got blown out at home in that playoff game. Kirk Cousins was the quarterback, and everyone said, like, man, he plays pretty well at times, but in primetime he struggles. And so I read this article, and they said that back when he was at Michigan State, his entire day was put together on an Excel spreadsheet. So every single day he woke up, it was color-coded. When was lunch? When was his 15-minute nap? When was it, and I just thought to myself, I got a buddy who has OCD. I know how the littlest thing throws him off, and maybe there was more to it than that. And then you start doing a deeper dive, and you realize it's not just prime time; it's outside the 1 p.m. Eastern time window that this guy struggles.
I thought you were talking about yourself.
No,
you definitely. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been clinically diagnosed with it, but you definitely are on that spectrum, my guy.
Berto, we're gonna stand for this OCD? Like, we're gonna stand, I have OCD. I mean, he's not gonna get called out for that. I believe.
Did you hit the bell? I think Berto's gonna hit the bell on this one. I don't know. OCD. Let's see where we end up with this. He's looking for something.
No OCD, my kiss my ass. Get out of here,
dude. You are pretty kind of.
What are you talking
along
about?
those lines.
On the spectrum? Is that what he said?
I mean...
Less than you.
Do you do it the same exact way every time?
No.
Oh.
Then if only anybody heard
maybe I've overestimated.
Yeah, that's
oversold it.
If only anybody ever heard what Roberto had to say off the air there, that would be a fireable offense for everybody on the show.